Good evening, good people. Good evening and welcome again to the Gaswa Outreach Show. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure that you send it and share it with friends. Please, when you come, subscribe to our page. Click on the likes if you're on Facebook. If you are on, I would say, if you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our page and like us so that in the future, when we start going on live, you'll be able to get it straight. So please make sure that you tune in. I am your host for this evening. My name is Kweku Afram. And as I said, that in the future, we're going to have other people also coming to take over in terms of the hosting. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Yes, tonight is another edition of our evening conversations. I would want to welcome Madam, Winifred for watching us. I've seen that when Winifred is watching, I can see that Mr. Foster Amwako is also watching. Thank you very much for watching. And as we say that, please share it wide and let people come and join in these conversations. I mean, we've started to have some interesting conversations over the past weeks because we want to educate ourselves. We want to know more about the issues that affect us. And so what we've been saying is that please, if you are, subscribed to any of our channels, suggest questions that you want us to discuss in the future. Suggest questions that you want us to discuss in the future. Please invite your friends to come and join this conversation because I believe that it is going to be important for all of us. And tonight, what are we looking at? We're looking at the subject of child abuse and culture. This is something that has become quite, I would say, pertinent over the past, weeks, especially over the past, I would say, maybe 4 months in lockdown, where we are right now spending a lot of time with our children. And then we find ourselves, treating them ways that you regard as child abuse. So today we're going to go into those conversations. We know that quite recently, there's been, a lot of news about this, actress called Equiapim Polo and her picture that she sent on the son's birthday, which she showed herself nude. And I'm not able to show it because I didn't find any picture that would block the child's face. But, it has been quite topical, So today we have guests who are here today with us. I'm super excited to bring them on, to introduce them. And we will be getting into our conversation. So I'll be introducing all my guests one after the other. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me start off by, introducing our first guest, Madam. Hello, Madam Tina.
Hello, Kweku. Hello, everyone, and thanks for watching. I'm Tina Latifa Jones. I'm an independent social worker based in the UK. I have 3 birth children, and my husband and I have fostered 13 children in the past 5 years.
Wow, you fostered 13 children in the past 5. So not only have you opened your home to, I would say family and friends, but also children that need, people to come and experience family life.
That's correct. Because of my background as a qualified social worker, unfortunately, I tend to get a number of children with very complex needs, including some sort of severe abuse.
So in relation to this topic, how important is this topic to you?
This topic is very important to me because as an individual that was brought up in Ghana before coming to the UK, I have seen and experienced both sides. So it's very important to me to really raise the awareness, and not just raising awareness, but also to help to talk about alternative forms of consequences. I hate to use the word discipline because it's got a lot of negative connotations.
Thank you very much for that. And can I please acknowledge Madam Georgina Kodom for tuning in, and also Kinsley. Oh, Old soldier is also watching us. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let me move on to Mr. Emmanuel Adolfo. Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Hi, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Adolfo. I'm a team manager in the Safeguarding Children team. So that is what I do. I work with children, and it's basically around child protection, safeguarding, and all that. So that is something I'm really passionate about, and that is why I felt it's good for me to come on here to talk a bit about what we experience or what we are observing, from day to day, and also with my background as a Ghanaian, you know how culture sort of plays a part in what we usually come across in terms of what is considered as abuse and all that. But in as much as we respect our culture, what we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we have different cultures in different countries, but beyond all that, the safety of the child is paramount. So we cannot use our culture as an excuse, and that is why I feel it's important for me to come on this program to actually share some of my experiences and what we come across on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Mr. Emmanuel, let me let in our viewers into a little bit of a secret. This man who's sitting here is a classmate. We sat in the same, lecture rooms.
That's right.
We studied together. And the next woman I'm going to also introduce was also in the same class with us. And we were study mates together. And who knew that one day we'll be in UK practicing social work. The next person I'm going to introduce to has been doing her bit, to try to help our communities.
Very interesting.
It's a short world, isn't it? It's a small world, they say.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Thank you very much. Then I am going to please at this time. Hello, Madam Adiko.
Hello, Afram. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. It's a joy to be back here.
It is absolutely a joy to have you again. And I believe that is this your second appearance or your third appearance in the topic that we've been discussing so far?
This will be the third. The third, I think, yes. That's the third.
Yes. Okay, so I mean, I'm sure that we have new people who are joining.
We got great feedback from the previous ones, and I hope today will be equally exciting.
Absolutely. Yes, we had great feedback. And for the viewers who are joining us for the very first time, can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Dinah Adiko. I live and work in Ghana. I am a trained social worker, and I've worn various hats when it comes to practice of social work. I have done direct practice where I worked with victims of child abuse. I managed the first shelter for abused women and children in Ghana. And then I moved to do policy work where I worked as technical advisor at the ministry. And we looked at a number of things. It was when I worked at the ministry that we worked on the child and family welfare policy for Ghana. And then we got the legislation for the implementation of the Domestic Violence Act. So issues around child rights and child protection is one of my passions. And I think the kind of conversations we have out here makes it important that when you brought up the need to have this conversation, I was excited and I decided to make a point to be here. So thanks for pulling us together. I look forward to hearing from Madam Tina and Mr. Adolfo and yourself. And as usual, the conversation that comes in the chat room, it even makes it even more exciting. So everybody, send us your question, your comments, and your contribution so that we have a very rich conversation at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for that. Yes, and on that note, let me take a few minutes to acknowledge those that I can see has joined us. So we know that Ricky Ekia Efriye is watching us live. Thank you very much for tuning in. Mr. Martin Luther is one of our outreach people. Next week, he'll be coming on to talk about another topic that we have, and he's also watching us live. So we are very, very excited to see you guys tune in to join in this conversation. And today, as we said, we're looking at the subject of child abuse and culture. So we're going to get straight into our conversation and find out what exactly, in your perspective, from our guests, what constitutes as child abuse. I would want to start with Madam Tina.
Right. Thank you very much, Kweku. Child abuse is a very broad topic and a very broad subject. But for the sake of what we are going to talk about this evening, I would just like to sum it up as is when an adult or another child intentionally harm a child. It could be once, it could be twice, or it could be over a period of time. It could be in the form of physical, emotional, sexual, or what we call neglect. And neglect could be a form of not actually showing a child love, not actually caring for the child, not giving the child certain basic necessities in life.
Yeah.
Abuse can also occur on our social media platforms, including some of the games. So it's not just our natural environment, but also in the virtual environment, which a lot of young people are now almost seeing it as as part of a reality. So we really need to stress on the fact that abuse also occurs on a number of the social media platforms. So to sum up, that is what my view, my opinion, and according to the NSPCC in England, that is a brief definition of what child abuse is. When we go into the culture, I could bring a bit more into that as well.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And again, I would like to invite our viewers to get into the discussion. What is your perspective of child abuse? How do you see it from where you are and from your perspective? Let me bring in Madame Dinah to throw a little bit of light from her perspective in relation to our topic and in relation to what we're discussing this evening, what she wants to highlight when it comes to child abuse.
When it comes to the definition, Auntie Tina summarized it extremely on point, where she talks about an act by an adult against a child that affects the child physically, sexually, emotionally, or leads to the neglect of the child. I would only want to add, for the purpose of listeners who were looking to hear things about verbal abuse, most often it is categorized along emotional abuse, because what verbal abuse does to children, which is one of the commonest form of child abuse, is it affects the child emotionally. So it has emotional or psychological manifestations on the well-being of the child. I would also want to add that it is child abuse involves any act, action or inaction that leads to harming the child now or later, affecting the child's future. So you may be doing things to the child that is harming the child's well-being, or you may fail to be doing things, and that could even be categorized under neglect, or it could be identified as a different form where you, as a caregiver or as a parent, in the child's life, refuse to do what needs to be done to protect the child, sometimes even from themselves. So you are not harming the child, but you have failed to guide this child or protect the child from harm or from themselves. So all of those things categorized, and Madam Tina says that it's really, really, really broad. And I'm sure as we have the conversation along, we would be able to give examples to explain how broad child abuse can be. So that's about the little bit she touched on cyber abuse. That goes on also. And then you gave an example of pornographic material, exposing children to pornographic material or content. All those can fall under child abuse.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to bring Mr. Adolfo in to give his view, but let me take a few minutes to also acknowledge people who've joined us soon. Look, this woman has become our super fan, yes? Madame Trudy Thompson. From the one that we started, she has not failed to join in, whether rain or shine. I mean, the other day she told me that she was started work, but she will still make the time. So, Madame, Trudy, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to always see you. It motivates us that actually we're doing something important here. Please, share those, comments with us. Please share those comments. Share the broadcast. Please, when you come and join in, invite your friends and leave us a comment, please. I mean, the comment section is a bit quiet today. Leave us a comment. Let us know that you can hear us live. You can hear us live and clear. And also, please get in touch and then please contribute to the conversation today. So let me bring Mr. Adolfo to also finally, share a little bit of light in terms of the question that we've posed as what is child abuse.
Well, right. Thank you, Ephraim. I think the earlier speakers have actually touched on what child abuse is about. So I think they've covered most of the areas of child abuse. What I just want to add is that usually, we tend to look at abuse caused by adults, but we also have child-on-child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that I want us to also pay particular attention to, because at the moment, what is happening is sometimes, because it is very clear and very suspicious when adults are abusing children. Now, some adults use children to try and get into other children and abuse them.
Yes.
So it's something that we need to also sort of consider. And the other thing which I was very, I think I also wanted to highlight is about the fact that sometimes when we talk about child abuse, we are looking at the actual perpetrator, but sometimes the inactions of somebody as well, can also be considered as abuse. For instance, if you are sort of present whilst a child is being abused and you do nothing about it, you are also sort of fully guilty as well. You have to act whenever it's every child protection or child abuse or whatever actions we need to take. It's everybody's business.
It's everybody's business.
That's it. So you don't actually look on whilst a child is being abused and you pretend as if it's none of your business. If something should happen to the child whilst you are there, you are also equally guilty. So we have to bear that in mind as well. But having said that, I think we've touched on the key types of abuse, which is the physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect.
Yes.
What I must say, as Diana said earlier on, sometimes maybe someone or maybe a viewer may be expecting a particular form of abuse, but generally there are so many, forms of abuse, but then they have been actually grouped into this key category. So as we sort of expand on some of our discussions and then given types of those abuse that comes under each of the types, then that will also help. But now what is actually worrying and very disturbing is about the online abuse, which is just now what most children are getting into. Some of them, this actually includes cyberbullying, whereby you have your child, you be in the house with your child. And that's, for me, that is even the more dangerous of those abuses, because sometimes if your child is being sexually abused out there, whenever the child, that something may be happening. But this cyber abuse or maybe online abuse, you'll be at home, your child will be at home with you, and the child will be abused, will be in her room being abused, whilst you will be in the same house without even knowing that such a thing is happening. And there has been examples of some teenagers, some young people who have been sort of self-harming because of things that they are actually exposed to online. We have children who are being groomed online and all that. So I think once we move on, we'll be able to throw more light on some of these abuses.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then I like the fact that people are getting into the conversation right now, and people are sharing some wonderful comments about the topic. And let me also again acknowledge, I feel so special, and I feel loved when my executives actually join the conversation. Our outreach lead, Madame Angela Pia, popularly known as Irama on Facebook, is watching us live. Madame Ya Boachua, Janet, is also watching us live. And then our media person who looks after our media and also now looking after our welfare, Mr. Dumenya, is also watching us live. We have Esther Nketia, who is also watching us live. Thank you very much for tuning in. And we have other people too who have joined us as well. Linda, Efia Insia, has also joined in, and she's actually made a comment, which I'm going to show right about now. She's saying that it's very true. We don't normally pay particular attention to the child, abuse. Thank you very much for that comment. And Mr. Martin Luther King, Martin Asamoah is also saying that there are different types, and that is what Mr. Adolfo, Madame Tina, and Madame Adiko also pointed on. And also he says that there are sexual, physical, emotional, and neglect, just like Mr. Adolfo also said. So thank you very much. And I have seen Madame Laura, who is also currently taking a new post that we're going to announce very soon. We're very excited about that within the association. She's currently one of our welfare leads who's also watching. Alan Bennett. Hello, Alan. Oh, my days. Alan has been on our show a few times, and Alan is right here with us. Thank you very much. Alan, I'll return your call. I've seen it. Okay, so thank you very much. Let's get into our conversation. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. Now, let's look in terms of the topic for today. So in what instances has culture, led to abuse? And before I say that, we need to state it categorically that, every child, irrespective of wherever they are, whether in Africa, whether in Europe, whether in the Asians, whether in the Americans, have a right to be safeguarded. They have a right to be protected from any cultural practices that harm them. But let's get into the discussion right now. And let me bring Madam, Tina Latifa Jones into the conversation, so that you start us off with the conversation in terms of your experience of the instances where culture has led to abuse.
Thank you very much, Kweku. Again, there are so many areas that we will talk about, but in terms of instances and culture, one of the things that I feel I will talk about tonight, which potentially some people may not have seen it as a form of abuse from the child's perspective. And this is where some of us, we come to Europe, America, wherever we give birth to the children, we are struggling to take care of them because of one reason or another. Or some people will actually say, I want to take them back to Africa where I grew up so they can learn our culture and our traditions. So these children are then taken to Africa. I mean, I'm from Ghana, so let's just assume. And I did that with my daughter for about 2 years. What a lot of parents fail to do, and why some of these children then become quite challenging when they go back home, is that parents do not explain to the children properly why they are going to Africa. And sometimes the people they are going to live with don't also understand. So the child may see this as a form of neglect. Mom and dad don't love me.
Wow.
And a lot of the time, parents, sometimes we also discuss or communicate with our children in a negative way when it comes to Africa.
Exactly.
Some children say that they only hear their parents talking about Africa when they do something wrong. So if you don't behave yourself, if you don't do this and that, I'm going to take you to Africa. And then some parents will say, come on, we're going for the summer holiday. They go for the summer. They don't bring these children back. They have not explained to the children properly. So these children are left behind. I know some children that even fought their way, managed to get to British High Commission, and they were brought back straight into the care system. But we are not saying our culture is bad.
No.
Like Mr. Adolfo said, culture can be defined in different ways. We have African culture, we have tribal culture, we have household culture. There are lots of different cultures that is multifaceted. But as parents, we need to explain to our children. And once the children go to Africa, we need to communicate with the host parents, whether it's a relative, an auntie, whoever. We really need to explain and keep the line of communication open and transparent, so that children will not see themselves as being in some sort of prison because they've done something wrong. So that is one area of abuse that I feel we need to highlight, because a lot of people, especially parents, may not see it as a form of abuse.
Wow.
Unfortunately, when the children return, some of them do return, the parents would have lost control of these children. So the children are feeling like parents don't care. So now that I'm back in the UK or in the US, I can do what I want. You can't say anything, you can't do anything. or try, I'll get the child line. I'll call the police. And then the parents feel like they have no control over their children, and then they blame the system. So what am I saying? Our culture is good, but we need to open the line of communication. We can't just pick a child from here out of nowhere in a blue summer holiday. You take them and you don't bring them back. That child will never forgive their parents, especially when they have a very negative experience when they go back. Because you know some of the stories back home as well, the children, some of them are actually sent to some of the remote villages and they are not accustomed to such living standards. So again, they feel neglected, they feel unloved, and then they start building this hatred towards their parents. So I'm sure my co-panelists will have other things to add on.
Absolutely. I mean, you raise a very, very important point, because most of us, because of I would say because of poverty, because of financial difficulties, we give birth and we want the children to be raised by our grandparents.
Sometimes separation and divorce as well, Kweku.
Yes.
So when the couple are split up and they cannot agree where the children can stay, then they look back home. Okay, let them go back home whilst we sort ourselves out. It's all well and good, but how are we explaining and sharing the information with the child? You know, personally, before I took my daughter to Ghana, she was only 3 years old, but we had a good communication. I started preparing her because I was going back to school full time. You know, so I explained, I showed her the pictures of the auntie that she's going to live with, my mom's younger sister. As soon as we got home, she's like, Mommy, so this is going to be auntie who's going to look after me. And guess what? She started calling me small mama and then started calling me auntie big mama. And I made sure I was in Ghana every 3 months. You know, so she had a very positive experience in Ghana. So unfortunately, when I tell her we're going to Ghana, she's like, when are we leaving? When we tell other children we are going to Ghana, they'll probably go and tell their teacher their parents are trying to take them to Africa and think negatively. So it's all about how we share the information to the kids.
It's about putting a positive spin on it and make sure that we highlight Africa, not as a punishment. Our Africa as a punishment, but we make sure that it is something precious. And it's actually a reward to go to Africa. To go to Ghana, to go to Zimbabwe, or wherever we come from. You raise a very, very important point. And look, the conversation is getting exciting. Thank you, Hindiatu, for your comments. I want to thank Trudy again, Loretta, Alan. Oh boy, Alan has written an essay. Please keep it short so that it doesn't cover it covers the whole guest. Please, keep your messages quite short so that it doesn't cover the screens for our listeners. So you are raising very important point. Let me bring Diana into the conversation. So Diana, so let's get deep into this. I mean, look, from and you are located, and right now you are based in Ghana. I'm sure that there are a lot of cultural things that you would want to reflect that contribute to child abuse.
Yes, so a small mama just told us about how to bring our babies to Ghana, to Africa. So when they come home to Africa, to Ghana, to Zimbabwe, to any other part of Africa, what are some of the things that happen to them that lead to what will be defined as child abuse, and why does those things happen? For example, we have earlier on set the stage by saying that child abuse means it involves any act or any act that is detrimental to the physical, sexual, psychological, emotional well-being of a child. So what is it that makes it easy for us to be able to subject or expose our children to those things? Often we keep talking about this is wrong and that is wrong, but it never goes away. Where is it rooted in? Where is it coming from? My first point, I'll say, as a culture, it is for Ghanaians, for example, to discipline a child. Discipline a child. And then, we got introduced to disciplining as parents or adults from certain narrative, even in our language. It comes from, for example, as Christians, we are very quick to quote, spare the rod and spoil the child. And then traditionally, we are quick to say a child must be seen and not heard. So if you as a child are attempting to be heard and not seen, remember that we already know that if we spare the rod, we are going to spoil the child. So instead of negotiating certain ethics and courtesies with the child, we are going to quickly resort to the rod to teach that child that you should not be seen, you should not be heard, you should be seen. As to where you should not be heard, you should be seen as a child came from, we are yet to discover. But it is really deep rooted and it is problematic. They keep saying that as African children and even adults, we struggle to be assertive. And people wonder, why are we not able to express ourselves freely? It is because we're told as far back as 3 years that you should not speak when adults are speaking, even if they are cracking a joke. I remember when my mother's friends came around to eat and we are clearing the table and cleaning up and they crack a joke. You dare not laugh. You dare not laugh. If you laugh, you were disrespectful to them. So that's how she was not doing it out of hate.
No.
She was doing it to teach us the right courtesies of life. And that's how she was brought up. So she just wanted to make sure that we're not loose children who were becoming loose adults. We needed to know our boundaries and all of that. But then fast forward today, we realized that it was not necessarily the best option to bringing up children. And the worst way of bringing up children to be assertive is not also the best. So then there's a need to strike a balance. How to strike that balance remain the art and craft of parents today. We're all learning how to strike the balance of making our children assertive and also making sure that they're respectful of others and no boundaries and all of that. And then there's also the perception in our culture where children are perceived as properties or their assets. So if you remember way back into time, men were encouraged to marry a lot of women, give birth to a lot of children who grew into their labor force and worked on their farms for them. Such that in Ghana, for example, Kwame Nkrumah struggled so hard to be able to get children to go to school for free. Both parents and children were conniving to dodge school because that is somewhere they belonged on the farms, they belonged in the fishing communities on the rivers, and they belonged in the markets. So children were produced in large numbers because they were supposed to serve as labor force. So if you connect that mentality to child labor today, there will be a connection. That same mentality, if they are supposed to serve as labor force, you can then understand also that if they cannot do labor work, it makes sense to sell them. So you see, we sell children to fishermen to go fishing. We sell them to cocoa farmers to go farming in exchange of 50 Ghana cedis or equivalent of $10 or probably 10 euros or 10 pounds. You understand? So then when we talk about child abuse and child trafficking, do we have to, maybe it's important that we trace it back to the idea where children were seen as property. And so when you have the conversation about child marriage also, when little girls were exchanged to grandpa husbands, because those grandpa husbands will give something in exchange for the livelihood of the family, you begin to connect and figure out why we would pick a child and sell it, because we started off with a mentality that children, and let me just drive us off board, and wives were properties.
Oh boy.
And so that's the same reason why these people can also be inherited. So for example, the Ghanaian culture, if your father is no more, if a man is no more, his brother can inherit his wife and his children and his cows and his goats and his farm and his chicken and his land. So the children and spouses or wives come together as part of the property or the estate of a man. So then it tells you how we use these things because they are property. But then the conversation began to change when we started talking about human rights and the rights of children and protection of children. We also have a certain mentality, for example, that children do not eat meat. So young children are deprived of protein that they truly need to grow. And they say if you give a child meat and protein, the child become a thief. Maybe this is also rooted in our history of lack and poverty, but we have that mentality. And what does it do to the health of our children? And it actually forces them to even steal. And then grown-up people who do not need that kind of protein binge on it, and then it has consequence for their health. And then the one last part also I'll quickly throw in is the issue about how we bring up our boys and how we deal with emotional development.
Okay.
One of them, bear in mind, soon. From 2 years old, as a child, you are discouraged from crying. You are encouraged to bottle up your emotions, and you are encouraged to channel it in the wrong way. And if you are a child, a male child who is expressive, you are mocked, you are humiliated, you are teased, because Burma is soon. And what are we seeing? What have we done to our boy children? So that is just by way, just giving you some of the grounds and roots upon which the way we treat children were built, and for which reason we are struggling to
Yes, internet is playing up a little bit. Dana is all the way from GH, and so I can see that her internet is playing up a little bit. But people are agreeing with what Dana is saying, and the comments are coming in thick and fast. That they are saying that we give all the meat to the fathers, and the fathers put on the pot bellies, and the children grow lean, and they are more nourished. All the comments that it's been talked about are very much agreed on. And I'll bring Mr. Adolfo into the conversation, as I hope that Dinah is able to sort out her internet and come back and continue with this conversation, because we need you to be here, and people are agreeing with what Dinah is saying. So, Mr. Adolfo, I know that Dinah has said a lot, but
she has covered a lot of ground, but I think I must add some of our practices, cultural practices, like female genital mutilation, which is usually done in some parts of Ghana. I believe, as we know, this is very, very abusive practice, which, as you know, in this country is highly unacceptable, and it's a criminal offense as well. But in some cultures, it's very accepted, for a lady to actually be circumcised. And sometimes when you look at the background in terms of why are they subjecting a human being to such inhumane sort of practice, you just, you can't just understand. Sometimes, one of the reasons which they usually give, is to try and reduce, the level of promiscuity. Because if you are not circumcised, the desire, for sexual sort of intercourse will be there. So once that is taken off, that means that you'll be there for your man, which I think is inhumane, for any sort of human being to be subjected to that sort of act. So these are some of the things that in some cultures they find that to be acceptable, but unfortunately it is abusive. And interestingly enough, some people in the developed world sometimes will just plan and take their children back home to sort of perform this sort of acts, and then they bring them back later, which for me, no matter where the child finds him or herself, they shouldn't be subjected to such form of abuse. So these are some of the things that unfortunately some of our culture accepts, that is their sort of way of life, which is not appropriate. Now let me move back to other aspects of emotional abuse, which I believe goes on a lot in our sort of cultural system. I think in Ghana, for instance, we don't usually allow the children to talk. So sometimes when they want to express themselves, there is no avenue, because once you try to, express yourself, you are either found to be rude, you are found to be very disrespectful, and all that. So what happens is they just keep that within them, and sort of it also sort of in a way manifests itself in so many other sort of ways, which is not even helpful in terms of their level of confidence. Sometimes when you compare, I must say this, a child in Ghana and a child in the developed world, you can see the difference. While the children in the developed world are very confident, they're able to do things, they're able to aspire very high. In Ghana and some other countries, children are not given the opportunity. So children are always very quiet, very withdrawn. They lack initiative. And that doesn't help. Some of us, we are fortunate to get into schools, to get into places where, fortunately, we're not exposed to those sort of abuse. But you can see, the other children who, even in class, they don't even want to talk. But that's what they've been exposed to at home, because you are not allowed to talk. So these are some of the practices that is actually, not, helping us. And that is also very abusive to our children. In Ghana and also in our culture, for instance, I'm a Ghanaian. That's why I always want to refer to Ghana, especially, most parents, and for that matter, adults in general, have that habit of humiliating children.
Yes.
Even instances whereby an adult has done something wrong to a child, in Ghana, in our culture, usually a child is never innocent.
Yes.
Sometimes, even if it's no fault of yours, you just have to admit it. And what kind of thing are we teaching our children?
Yes.
Are we teaching them honesty?
Yes.
And the child become honest in future? Because they are not allowed, to be able to express themselves openly and honestly. And honestly, it's not something that is helping us. And it's high time we move away from those sort of practices, in order to allow our children to be able to develop freely, to allow them to be able to achieve in life. So I think in terms of our culture, I think we have a lot to do.
Yes.
We have a lot to do. Sometimes we do say that, okay, those days we used to have a siwa and the rest. Now it's no more there. My brother, it is still there in a different form.
Yes.
You see an old man calling a child, my wife, and people just look on as if it's nothing. But here, the moment you begin to say those things, then we'll be looking at you, watching you. It's a form of grooming.
Yes.
Because you are preparing the mind of the child, which is, abusive. So these are some of the things that we find acceptable. Sometimes we will laugh over it in Ghana. Okay, oh, my wife. And even parents will be pushing their children. Oh, look, your husband is here. Who told you that child is ready to marry? Why do you start that conversation with a child who has no idea what marriage is about? So these are some of the things that I think we need to highlight so that we refrain from that kind of life which is not helping us in any way, and which is not helping our children. It rather exposes them to more abuse.
Okay, all right. Okay, so somebody's generated some conversation in there, and I know the person, but I'm not going to mention names. They are trying to equate circumcision to female genital mutilation. I mean, I know that in Ghana, it is part of our culture that we circumcise our children. And she's trying to say, is it not also emotional abuse? Okay, so that person is thrown in a cultural aspect.
I know that person is trying to play devil's advocate, but if I can come in here,
yes,
when it comes to male circumcision, it's more of a religious and a traditional thing which has been going on for some time. And I'm not here to justify that is right or wrong. It depends on your religion and your tradition. I'm not sure about the laws in Ghana now. Maybe Madam Diana can throw some light on it later. But here in England, it has now been identified as a criminal offense, which the offender can go to jail for up to 14 years. And like Mr. Adolfo said, FGM is practiced in Ghana as well, in Togo, in a lot of African countries. FGM has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with religion, either Christianity, Islam, nothing of that sort. FGM is purely for the benefit of the men in those societies who practice it. Because they believe that there are about 4 or 5 different types of FGM. And the most brutal one is when the woman's, I don't even want to go into details in there, where everything is sewn, apart from the tiny hole where you can wee from.
Oh my days.
And then on the night of your wedding, the husband is supposed to actually open up. Okay, this is because they believe if they don't do that, some women are going to be promiscuous. And it will be evidence that on your wedding night, you are indeed a virgin. I mean, how? I've worked with a lot of women in Milton Keynes. As a matter of fact, we ran a program in Milton Keynes where I work with a number of African women who have actually gone through FGM. Majority of them are still struggling today. Some of them can only have one child. After one child, they can't bear the pain anymore.
Oh boy.
So bless one of our African doctors in London, St. George's Hospital, who are now trying to do reconstructive surgery for some of these women. And then that has a knock-on effect because now these women have gone through FGM. They can't have so many kids. The men too wants the children. The men then goes and marry more women to have children. Some women are struggling to have sexual intercourse in their marriage because of FGM.
Oh boy.
The men can't handle that. They go and have other women. So we are now having a bigger problem here. That woman has been abused as a child. Now she's going into marriage. That is following her into her marriage. She's not enjoying her marriage. Her husband is not enjoying her as he's supposed to. They're both not enjoying the marriage. Now she can't have enough kids. So the husband then goes and looks for another woman.
Oh boy.
You know, and then the children then also suffers because sometimes there will be separation, there will be loss, there will be divorce, there will be all sorts. And then some of these children, when they are girls, they also go through the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and because the women have been brainwashed, I've worked with some women who told me, although their parents did not want them to have it, they followed their friends and had it done without their parents' consent.
Oh my God.
So if you don't have it done, you are unclean. You will not get a husband in that community.
Oh my
So
God.
some women had it done without their parents' consent.
Look at this.
So with all due respect, female genital, mutilation, cutting, whatever, I could be quite brave here and say you cannot compare that with male circumcision. Male circumcision, according to some scientific research, has been also evidenced that it's a form of cleanliness. Now, having worked in HIV for a number of years, I have come to some research that states that men that are not circumcised are more prone to contracting the HIV virus than men that are circumcised. So there appear to be some form of health benefits for men that are circumcised when it comes to some STDs.
Yeah.
So perhaps what some people may argue is that in that case, then maybe the children should wait till they become an adult and make a decision whether they will be circumcised or not. That is another topic for another day, Afra.
Okay, another topic, and certainly for another day. And look, that it is getting exciting over there. Our numbers too are growing. The number of people who are watching are growing. We have about 46 people currently watching, and the comments are coming in and fast. And that is what we want. We want people to engage in these conversations. And look, let me try and summarize it a little bit in our local dialect. Now, in some of my Canada also, we can't say I give a cheating. To say, in some of my boss no dorsum. The eka one to say the hydrogen pane yamba bane mana yetwitwa wo no yetwa ma de ne se na be yo munya ntenka no ene wudi asem kra de eka ne se no we just chutum u bibi u yo oba bibi se chutum enim se Ghana no enkoso bebre but bibi mamu bebre no Africa e friend saying bibi mamu bebre no asade ma we da so koso I just say hydrogen pa enti ye ka your friends are mamma something in my high ya omabo so bebre enkola ya ka chom say memezu na bibia na de ahya omo na a friend say untimi nkasa wai o papa ne o mame enya ahoho no mudi nkomo na asre kakra bi kra na ada ne asem atem didie Mr. Adolfo asem o kan say atem didie ebi mo no ma specialist in atem didie e di watem ma ne ewura odompemu say ma ne nya yes enya kra yes ja nya and I think you encouraging a man no more casacra. If you want to know my what a class of yeti are born, and say, Debia is a count to our bone, Uteu, Shedenim, Cotobenku, yea, did you attempt Santa Man, Colano Crano, or Munya, sir, and crunch and I, and more with me, and what give a brino. Boy, I born on yatem to get the in the end. Let's come back into the conversation. Let's come back to the conversation. I want to bring Dinah in as we move along in this discussions. Now, let's look at this concept of discipline. Concept of discipline and how that leads to abuse. And I'm going to start a conversation with Madame Adiko.
As I explained, Afram, thank you. As I explained,
Mm.
that we set off with a mindset. First, it's based on how we perceive children and the value they have in society.
Mm.
First and foremost, children are a burden.
Mm.
Children are a burden. They're a financial burden, they're emotional burden, they're all sorts of burden.
Mm.
Initially, as I said, we started off thinking that children were assets. So they
Mm.
were supposed to help you as your
Mm.
labor front. When
Mm.
that changed and they began to go to school, and then we started paying for school fees, children are a burden. But
Mm.
also, we have that mentality of discipline such that anything that we have one understanding of what discipline is. And
Mhm.
discipline has to be physical, has to be aggressive, and has
Mm.
to be rigid to be able to send a message.
Mm.
Apart from beating,
Mhm.
from sometimes I was telling my children yesterday, there's at times when we actually ginger our children, especially our girls. We
Mm.
put ginger and pepper in their vagina and
Mm.
leave them in the sun as a
Mm.
way. Yep, metua kakadru. Yebetua kakadru sesia. Yebetuano,
Mm.
yebetuano, yebetuano.
Mm.
And it is simply because either you didn't wash your clothes, you broke a plate, you took a fish that you shouldn't have taken.
Mm.
Sometimes it's so trivial, but I don't even care how exaggerated your misbehavior was. You
Mm.
just the child shouldn't be treated in a certain way. But for many people, it is not because they are wicked.
Mhm.
For many people, it is because they think that is the way out to straighten a child. Unfortunately, the more rigid and tough we are on children, the more we lose them, the more they go wayward. Training a child. For example,
Mm.
withholding privileges. I remember once saying withholding privileges, and somebody asked them, there are no privilege to withhold into Abrona Nebekoso. But to be real,
Mm.
even there are so many things, and people, if they think they wouldn't be physical, for example, they
Mm.
withhold their meals. You can
Mm.
starve children not to eat from morning till night
Mm.
because they've done something wrong. So
Mm.
parents need guidance. A lot of people jumped into parenting without knowing what that institution is about and
Mhm.
how to go
Mhm.
about it, with
Mhm.
carrying our own difficulties and burdens.
Mm.
And a lot of parents are also emotionally frustrated and stressed,
Mm.
very, very frustrated and stressed to the point that they need to vent on someone. It's
Mhm.
either their job or their relationship. And you know, the issue of power play is such that if women are in relationship where their partners are abusing them,
Mm.
the hierarchy of power is such that they have dominant power over their children. So they turn to their children and then exert a lot of abuse on them. So
Mm.
there's a whole lot of confusion, but the bottom line is that we've battered it with the mentality that spare the
Mm.
rod and spoil the
Spoil the
child.
child.
That mantra, we have to revisit it because it has been the basis of most of the violent acts we commit to our children. But
Mm.
that is in discipline, and that comes with emotional and then verbally abusive. And you know,
Mm.
I think Ghana, it's becoming an issue now. From even our comedy, our
Mhm.
movies and our comedy, we
Yeah.
have turned insult into a sport or a game where
Mhm.
we have a lot of fun at. And so it's become an everyday thing to ridicule people, to
Yes.
abuse them at their core, just to
Mhm.
communicate a point. And you
Imagine.
notice that most of our comedy, especially our local language movies and comedies, are
Mm.
heavy with insults, very,
Yes.
very abusive, tearing people's physical and emotional beings apart just
Mm.
to be able to communicate. And sometimes we think that is humor. So
Yeah.
if on the humor market insult is selling, then you
Mm.
can imagine what is happening on the discipline market.
Tell me
So
about.
then that is a problem, and we need to talk about that. But I know that our time is fast going. We are almost
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
20 minutes away. And
Yeah.
then I see a number of people asking for different issues to be talked about.
Yeah.
Witchcraft, a child. Then came Christianity and
Mhm.
charismatic Christianity at a different level.
Yes.
So then there was this huge thing that caught on at a point where
Mm.
children were being accused of witchcraft. And they are
Mhm.
the sons of their parents or their caregivers not prospering in life. And we
Mhm.
see children are being chained, children are
Mm.
being abused, they've been subjected to a lot of violence because somebody said they are witches. And
Mm.
that is a problem up to the and any child who exhibits the slightest form of mental health issues is
Mm.
picked on to be a witch. And
Mm.
these children are treated in very barbaric manner. If your caregiver or your guardian or parent has issues with their business, they look around for the old woman in the house or the child in the house. If it's not the old woman, is a child, and they accuse, there's so much accusation. Stepchildren are the first point of call for witchcraft accusation. We blame them for anything that goes wrong in the family. Sometimes, even if nothing is going wrong, we blame them that they intend to make things to go wrong. So that's also one practice that when we are engaging our religious leaders, we need to bring that up very, very, very strongly. The issue about accusing children of witchcraft. And then if you are in the north where witchcraft accusation is a known practice, if your parent or grandparent is accused as a witch, the stigma follows you for life. And those children sometimes are even driven out of school and they don't get the opportunity to go to school. So there's so much that happens that children are just at the middle and the receiving end of everything. It's very difficult to rescue. You rescue from one end, then you lose them on the other end. But before I rest, I know the sexual abuse will come up pretty shortly. Is the issue Auntie Tina explained very clearly FGM. I just wanted to throw this in. Why FGM is an issue. Ghana FGM has been outlawed. We are not supposed to practice female genital mutilation, but our neighboring countries, particularly Burkina Faso, still practices it. So they cross the border and go there and practice it. And there are two mindsets behind it. One is that if you need to get a husband, you must be mutilated or you must be cut. And that if you are not cut, you will not be clean and you will not have a successful life. So people have been brainwashed, including women and girls, to the point that Auntie Tina said they offer themselves to be mutilated, and that's how bad. But let me just give you the history of why female genital mutilation happens. The bottom line is that because they don't want women to be promiscuous, the people who practice don't want women to be promiscuous, the idea is to remove their clitoris. So it's not only they actually cut out the clitoris because it's the most sensitive part of the genitalia, and that part increases sensation. And the idea is that we do not want you to be to enjoy sex and be promiscuous, so remove it. So either remove it and leave it to heal with keloids, or you remove and stitch it. Whichever way, the idea is to reduce or remove the sensation of sex from women so that they remain faithful to their husband. In fact, they treat sex like a chore in that it is painful, so they will not enjoy it with any man. But it's the same culture also that promotes polygamy. So you keep wondering, if you are a culture that allows men to have so many wives, why are you bothered about that one wife enjoying sex? But then again, all of this have so much gender dynamics. So it is very imbalanced to come. And then why are men circumcised? They are circumcised to make them more powerful. That their genital organs are strong, they are heavy, they are African. Such that they are powerful on the market. And then the opposite is for women to weaken women. So the two of them are not even at par. And as for the health implications, it's already been said. So I'll rest it there.
Ajay. Asemo, look, there's a lot of comments there, and I thank you very much for engaging very much in this topic, and that is what we want. And there's a lot being said. I mean, that we should mention, touch on cryptocurrency and how that affects us. There's a lot of topics. People are saying that this topic is huge. So this is going to be part one. I'm going to invite you guys again to come back for part two. So please clear your diaries. So let me bring Mr. Adolfo into the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
There's a lot to cover, isn't it?
I think, I think, it's good, for us to have maybe another segment of this discussion. But I will continue from where Diana ended. I'm not sure whether male circumcision is to make the male powerful. I'm not sure about that. I think for me, looking at the two, when I saw that comment coming, I said, wow, that's a very debatable issue, which can take us the whole day. Male circumcision and female sort of genital mutilation. It can generate a whole lot of discussion. But I think for me, the key thing is, what is the import of doing that? What are we trying to gain at the end of the day? With men, we know the health implications.
Yes.
So genuinely, if you're a child, a male, and you go through that, though it may be painful and all that, but at the end of the day, it's just to help you. With the female one, the justification for me is unreasonable.
Yes.
Why is it that men should go out and enjoy sex? and don't want the female or a woman or a lady to go and enjoy sex. It doesn't make sense. So for me, there's no justification for that. And also, I'm glad that Diana did mention that, FGM has been actually outlawed in Ghana.
Yes.
But I have so many reservations about things that have been actually outlawed in Ghana, whether the law actually works. Because I know, people in this country who usually try to take their children back home, to get some of these things done. Because in this country, once you do it, you are in trouble.
Yes.
Even sometimes, instead of some Ghanaian parents or maybe parents from the ethnic minority background to learn appropriate ways of disciplining their children, all that they will say is, "Oh, we are Medobeko Ghana." So sometimes it has also created a bad impression in the minds of our children in this country that Ghana is, a place where children are taken to be abused. Because they will tell you here, if you do, I'll take you to Ghana. And I know instances where people will tell their children, we are going for holidays. They'll get to Ghana, they'll take your passport, and the next day you hear your parents are back in England. And you are left there because you are too stubborn, you don't listen and all that. So I think these are some of the things that we have to sort of consider. And coming back to the issue about discipline, I think we have to make it very clear. Disciplining your child is not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Yes.
Because children do not know what is good or what is right or what will help them. As adults, we have the experience.
Yes.
We've had the benefit of going through certain things, so we know what is helpful and what is unhelpful. So discipline in its sense is not a bad thing. It's to try and shape the child. It's to try and help the child, sort of follow a very good path so that they can get a better future. But unfortunately, some adults, and for that matter, parents, are actually using that as an opportunity to abuse their children. And that's the sad thing.
Yes.
Because one, sometimes when you look at what some parents do to their children, some of them will use their belts in this country, beat their children with several marks. And you wonder, are you actually looking at correcting your child, or you are just trying to maybe kill your child?
Ask again.
So I think that is what, we as parents and also as professionals, should be advising people and also helping them. The other time I was mentioning this point here where, we have to look at how we sort of reorient, people who are coming from other backgrounds are actually reorientated into the system. Because we carry all our culture here. And, the first time we get to know that it's unacceptable is when we get in trouble, with the law.
Yes.
I've had instances where, someone will just slap the child for not attending school. And sometimes when you follow up, all that you hear is, "Oh, that's my child. I can do whatever, I want to do, to my child." It has nothing to do with you. I'm sorry. Safeguarding is everybody's business. Yes. So once you have your child here, it's not only just your child. The state has a duty. And unfortunately, some parents are losing their jobs because of some of these things.
Yes.
Some of them are going through a whole lot, even to the extent of having prison sentences.
Yes.
For abusing their children.
Of course.
So it is something that as parents and as people from the ethnic minority background, once we get here, we need to be mindful of the fact that some of the practices that we used to do in Ghana, for instance, we have these stress positions. You get a child, you put a child in a corner.
Touch your toe.
For the child to squat for maybe about half an hour. There was an instance when somebody asked the child to squat for about 1.5 hours. Imagine. How abusive is that? Some of them will tell you, stand there, raise one of your legs. So these are some of the things that I think we need to look at, in terms of how we discipline children. Absolutely. In Ghana, and I know we have this system whereby they will, get, pepper and all that. And then
I talked about it, yes.
And in some instances, children are removed from their parents because of that.
Yes.
Although we know that back home it has some medicinal value and all that. But unfortunately, you can't do that here.
No, I mean, you can't do it anyway. You shouldn't be doing it anyway.
Well, I'm being cautious here because I know that it is done in Ghana. Even though it's not, it may be outlawed, but it's still happening.
It does. And that is why we're having these conversations.
Yeah.
Because I'll be bringing Madam Tina into the conversation right now. Look, the psychological effects that it has on people by inserting all this, pain, very, painful, I would say, ingredients into people's private parts.
Yeah.
It can kill you.
Yeah.
You can develop a reaction.
Yeah.
And all these concussions that I know that people, they call it enema or something, where bentua that we use and all that. I know the white people also do some, and they call it enema or I've forgotten what the name actually is.
Yeah.
But how are they actually tested? How do we know whether these things are you're not going to die as a result of that?
No, it's just to inflict pain. Yeah.
And we're inflicting pain because what do we say? When we are going to Kakadua, what do they say? We are collaborating. It is punishment.
Yeah.
It is not for any medicinal value.
No.
And see, because people tell me about a friend Angela also. Many Angela,
yeah.
So what I'm saying is that there's this pastor who threatened to use ginger, or maybe talked about it for whatever reason, and this child internalized it and went to school and reported it. That child was in care for a long time. We had to, talk and counsel and support. This is going on. This is going on. We are not talking about fairy tales here, please.
Yeah. But Mr. Frank, can I just bring in this one? I think it's very important that you touch on the point about parents threatening their children.
Exactly.
Some people take it that it's not a crime. Oh, I didn't do it. I was just trying to threaten the child. It is emotional abuse.
Yes.
Yes.
And some parents in their houses, they have specific places where they've kept canes, they've kept belts, and always they will make reference to those things. So even the child sometimes is in the household, doesn't feel comfortable.
Yes.
And they give them all sorts of names. The canes have special names. They are all abusive.
Yeah, and
that is it's time we refrain from doing this sort of things.
Yes.
There are proper ways that we can actually discipline our children.
Exactly.
And that is what we're saying that as parents, we should use. And that is what is going to help the children. Because if you inflict pain on the child, you haven't taught the child anything.
No.
So why not try and talk to our children? Let me end. I can see Tina has a lot to say. So.
You taught your child violence. But what we are teaching our children is violence. What we're saying is that if you disagree with somebody, you inflict pain on the person.
Yeah.
So it's not that we've not taught our child anything. We've actually taught our children violence. Madam Tina, sorry for keeping you long.
That's okay. I mean, you've all raised very important points, and I can see some of the contributions coming up as well. Yes. One of the things I wanted to highlight when you mentioned, punishment and discipline being a form of pain. One of the things I think sometimes parents forget when they inflict all this pain, depending on the age of the child, we are damaging the child's brain. Because a lot of research has actually evidenced that obviously we have 3 parts of the brain, and the midline, which is where we are supposed to store information and remember a lot of things. When children are traumatized, when we talk about trauma, all these forms of discipline that we are talking about actually traumatizes children. I still tell my children when I was in, I think, class 4, and we were asked to write down the formula of a triangle. I know it, but I couldn't. No, we should say it. I knew how to write the formula, but for some reason I couldn't say it. I still have the mark on my middle finger from the canes that I received. So since then, I couldn't get up to speak. And I can tell you, I failed my O-level maths. Because as a child, at that young age, I went to school very young as well. So by 10 years, I was in boarding school. I was in secondary school from 1 when I turned 11. So you can imagine at year 5, being beaten black and blue because I could not say half base times height.
Oh.
The formula of triangle.
Oh.
So a lot of children, when they are traumatized, and that could be beating, that could be knocking on the head, that could be asking them to squat for an hour. You know, all these things can affect the way the child's brain develops.
Exactly.
Because they are traumatized. There are a lot of movies that I use for my therapeutic training when I'm showing foster carers about positive parenting. And sometimes some other Ghanaian communities have called for me to come and show some of these things. And it shows you the effect of child abuse from a young age and how that translates to an adult. And especially teenagers. At the moment in the UK, and I'm sure in Ghana and other places, parents are screaming out for support to manage their teenagers.
Yes.
They have forgotten some of them have forgotten what they did to them when they were 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And then it's affecting their academic work. They cannot actually remember half of the things.
Yes.
And instead of the parents to support them, they are even abusing them more. And that is where the emotional abuse comes in, the name callings.
Yes.
Comparing them to their cousins and their other siblings. Every child is an individual. Even twins have got their own identity. And I know we are all guilty sometimes of comparing our children. But my main point here is the effect of trauma. I cannot stress enough how the effect of trauma is actually affecting the children now. We see children who are self-harming. Before I came to England, I knew nothing about self-harming. The Americans would say the Americans have a slightly different technology for self-harming. You know, a lot of children are self-harming now. It goes back to children are seen and not heard. So even as a parent, when a child comes to share some very sensitive information, some parents don't know how to handle the situation. So what do? They beat their child up. If that happens the next time around, that child ain't gonna say anything.
No.
And this is where, especially in sexual abuse, because of reputational damage, so-called reputational damage, the family thinks if they accept that their child has been sexually abused, then that child is bringing a shame to their family.
Yes.
So that child will have to suffer in silence. Never mind all the ginger and everything else. When you know families are going out, you don't go out. They start calling you names. Some parents even blame their own children for being sexually abused. How?
How?
This covers all the different types of abuse that we are talking about. And this goes deep. It runs deep. And as some of our viewers have said, people are parenting the way they knew how.
Yes.
But when we come to the West, and I'm not saying just, I mean, we have the lives of Madam Diana in Ghana, and I know a lot of people because our charity stars work in Ghana as well. There are a lot of places parents need to open up. When you go and buy a television, it comes with a manual. When you buy a mobile phone, it comes with a manual. When you are pregnant, do you get any manual? When you give birth, you don't have a manual of how to look after children.
Again.
So it should not be an embarrassing thing as mothers to ask.
Okay.
To ask how to parent your child.
Exactly.
We should all be open and be supportive. You could have your third child. I mean, I have 3 girls, and they are very different. I only have to have a certain way of looking at my second daughter, and already she'll go to a room and start sulking. My youngest daughter, I have to explain everything because she will keep asking me questions. But mommy, why? But this. I said, Lord, give me patience. So I have to have that patience and explain. But that is where sometimes we struggle because we are stressed out. Like others are saying, we are stressed out. So we take our stress on the children by beating them up and asking them to be quiet because I say so. There's nothing like stop because I say so. The child will do it again because you haven't explained why you are asking them not to do it. So why I say let's help the children to self-regulate, because when children are traumatized, they are not able to regulate themselves because that part of their brain has stopped developing or has not developed properly.
Yes.
So they cannot regulate their emotions. So they need us, the parents and caregivers, they need us even more to help them to co-regulate and teach them the skills of self-regulating. Otherwise, I'm afraid these children are struggling and it will take them into adulthood. And then we have adults. Unfortunately, in the UK, a lot of the children in the care system, only 3% goes up to tertiary education.
Look at
And
that.
more than 50% end up in prison. Because they can't regulate their emotions, they get angry, they act out, and they commit offenses, and then they end up in the youth offending system. And some of them actually feel safe to be in prison. How sad is
that? That is absolutely terrible, and that is and I'm looking at our time, and we have a few other things to also cover. But you make very, very, very important comments there. You know, where we say that it did us no harm. Are you sure? How do we react when somebody crosses us in traffic? That would be a typical example to see whether it did you no harm. When somebody angers you, what is your first response? Do you fix a blow? You know, then maybe did you harm? And do you get angry to the extent that your body, you start having physical effects on your body? We are developing heart conditions, we developing stroke and other things as a result of these things. So it certainly did us a lot of harm. You know, let's move on to the other aspects, because I know we've touched on this already in terms of the the cultural views that negatively impact on our children. I think that some of their conversations have centered around that. But let's make a few comments about that before we try and wrap up. So I'll come to Madam Diana again, for you to start us with that conversation.
Yeah, I have just seen in the chat room that somebody raised an issue. Angela Fran talks about children with disability, and you know how culture receives children with disability. The moment they are born and it's diagnosed that they have a disability, there's so many perceptions. If you go back into history, way back, these children were discarded. Sorry to use this harsh word, but they were discarded off. Even children, multiple births, twins were thrown away. They were sacrificed to the gods. Children, albino children are not accepted even up to date. So children with disability experience a different layer of abuse. And if the child with disability is also female, there's outright rejection. Children with autism, blind children, all forms of disability that as soon as we diagnose children with, it becomes very difficult to love them. Originally, as African parents, I can only say that because I know about it. It's been very difficult for parents to show love. If you were born before the 80s, 70s, 60s, and earlier, you were not used to being hugged by a parent. To have a parent saying, I love you. And can you imagine the atmosphere where you get a hug and they say, I love you, and they say, have a nice day? Can you imagine the atmosphere that child grows in versus the one who said, you know, it's very instructional, it's not interactional. And so those manifest in the form of psychological emotional abuse. And coming from the way we see our relationships and the lives we have as a people and the history we have. So it's very important that in this conversation, we talk about children with disability. In fact, they are almost forgotten every day, everywhere, in everything. And they are forgotten in their home and they get a different kind of treatment. It's only one. Many women have had their husbands leave them because they gave birth to a child with disability.
Imagine.
And that follows up with no support whatsoever, no financial support, no care. And most often, depending on the severity of the disability, the mother is unable to go onto the field to work and earn an income to take care of that child and probably the rest of her siblings. And mothers are stigmatized for either committing adultery that resulted in having a child with disability. So there's just so much unacceptance of children with disability. And that's a whole conversation that we should be having very, very much soon. And I think there was another question about trochosi, which I want to throw in very quickly. Trochosi is a practice that is
widowhood rights. I mean,
yes, trochosi is a practice in the Volta region where when an individual or a family commits an offense, it includes stealing a fowl to sleeping with somebody else's partner, wife or husband, to stealing from somebody's farm, or doing something unacceptable, they are supposed to go and appease the god through a fetish priest at a shrine. And what is admitted as an appeasement of the god is usually the gods is usually a virgin girl. So to be sure that this person is a virgin, it has to be this person has to be picked young. So most often they are taken to the shrine as early as 10 years, 8 years, 7, 12, ongoing. And when they get into the camp, the shrine, they are at the disposal of the fetish priest. So he can pick, it's like going to the poultry farm and selecting a fowl to be slaughtered for you for dinner. You can pick any of these young little ones whose education had already been cut off to go and serve the priest sexually. Do you see the gender, the intersection between child abuse and gender? Where when an individual offends the gods, whether he's often is a male adult, it is a female child or a virgin who is used to compensate the gods. They sacrifice the life of a girl child to compensate the gods for stealing your neighbor's fowl. So that is why truculence is one thing that people say, oh, this human rights, gender, child rights people, you are working against our culture. But this is a mindset that is archaic, that is harmful, and that we want to do away with.
Absolutely.
So we define some of these things as harmful traditional practices. We don't pick our bags and be interested in the beautiful culture that we have from our food, our clothes, our dance, our music, but we look out for things that are harmful to people. When you talk about widowhood rights, I would pick that conversation because, again, it starts with a girl child. So you are in a marriage and your husband dies. The first and foremost thing is that the suspicion that you killed your husband. Then it comes with depending on which part of the country you come from, there are different things that are done with you and for you. It starts from scraping your hair to leaving you with the corpse where you hold one toe until day breaks, to drinking the water that was used to bathe him. And if you refuse to drink that bathing water that was used to bath the corpse, it means that you killed him or you know about his death. But flip the coin, and when we talk about gender intersectionality, flip the coin, and you will notice that when a woman dies, her husband is supported. In fact, if they are not careful, the husband will be served with the younger sister of the widow of the deceased woman, so that he's comfortable. He will not do mourning for 1 year. He would quickly be encouraged to marry so he doesn't suffer. But when a woman loses her husband, the conversation changes. And then you quickly want to talk about the role of the father. You know that I remember once we were on a campaign and we were talking about neglect and maintenance of children. And a man asked us, have you seen a cockerel with the children following it? I hear it's a saying, it's a saying in Akan. A cockerel that the kids follow. So again, it's rooted in some kind of culture because our proverbs generated from a certain kind of mindset and belief system. So when you are asking, say, in other words, a man is not supposed to be responsible for his children. And we remember telling him that don't start comparing yourself to akuko. So then you have to take care of your children. So the role of men in taking care of their children can contribute to some of the things we talk about when we talk about neglect. But even more, because of the masculinity agenda that we've driven for long, we have turned fathers into monsters whose role it is to discipline. They are the ones who use the belt. They are the ones who box their teenage son as though they are Muhammad Ali in the ring. And they want to, even if it is hard for them, they need to satisfy society's terms of reference that the father disciplines. In our one of our textbooks in Ghana, the role of the father is the father disciplines and the mother cooks. So, and when they say you fathers, Mr. Adolfo and Afram, they say you have to discipline. So whether you think this deserves any brutal act or not, you need to show your masculinity not only to your children, but to your wife and to your neighbors, the compound house co-tenants, that you are a man and you have to be, as the more brutal you are, the more solid of a man you are. So those mindsets have not supported the upbringing of our children. We have not said we shouldn't discipline our children. We should discipline them when we should find ways that shouldn't harm them. I heard you say, Auntie Tina said that I went off a little bit, that it didn't harm us. You,
Yes.
if as a woman, as a young girl, they had packed ginger into your vagina or genitalia and left you under the sun, does it occur to you why you keep quelling up with your partner? Does it occur to you? But is it because in the morning when you wake up, we don't see it on your face, you think it's not had any harm on you?
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about, and I think we can continue this.
I think so. I know, right?
About marriage and sexual
Let me bring in Madam Tina into the conversation. Mr. Duffel, let me bring Mr. Duffel first. Touch on this cultural ones before we try and wrap up and talk about some of the things that we can begin to do as a community to address some of these concerns. So if you've got any views to share in terms of this cultural views that are impacting negatively on our children. Oh, you are muted. Let me unmute you. Yeah, you are muted. Unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that we need what we call cultural intelligence. We need to be able to understand the culture of people.
Okay.
We need to be able to support people to understand what is acceptable. For me, sometimes we need to look at the culture versus law.
Okay.
There are times that we believe in certain things, but they are against the law. So I think it's important for us as practitioners, as parents who have this sort of awareness or this knowledge to share with other parents so that they don't get themselves into that sort of situation. For instance, I know in Ghana, most of the time, it's very difficult for parents to show love to their children. I think earlier on, Dinah touched on that. We don't hug our children. You don't kiss your child.
And somebody was saying that there are other ways of showing affection without.
Let me come to that. I think it's very important. I think the issue is here. Now, as a parent, you don't show love to your child. You don't even kiss your child. And sometimes, some of us were brought up in Ghana. Sometimes when somebody even kisses you, you feel there's something wrong. Oh my goodness, what is this? Because it's not usual to you.
Oh yeah.
But it should be normal thing. So what tends to happen is that if you don't show that love to your children, they get that love from outside where they are being abused. You get a pedophile, they will show all sorts of love to your child, which they don't get at home.
Yes.
So if you don't do that, you are giving room for somebody out there.
Yes.
To use that to abuse them. But it is also important, I think the point that the person raised is also important that in some cultures, they have different ways of showing their love. And I must say, I think I have an example to share whereby we have a situation where we, had to, a parent from our background had to be assessed. And the assessor was saying, oh, this woman, there's no warmth. She doesn't show any love, to the children. So the children should not be returned to this woman's care. But I know what was happening. I didn't blame the woman because she doesn't know. That's not how she was brought up. She goes into contact and she'll be standing there, hands around her without even hugging the children, showing them the love. That's not what she's used to. But what she does is that she will try and find out from each child, what do you want? What is your preference? And she'll make sure that she satisfies all those needs. And that is how she was showing her love. But this, assessment came out that, oh, this woman is not emotionally available to her children. I said, my brother, it's even today that things have actually changed. Ghanaian men to even say, I love you to their wives is a problem. It's a wahala. So these are some of the things that we need to enlighten ourselves, that let us show love to our children. Let us embrace them. Let us listen to them. When you do these things, you actually narrow the scope for them to be abused. Because they feel comfortable to come to you and share their problems with you.
Yes.
Under this lockdown, COVID-19 and all that, we are in our rooms. You don't know what your child may be in the same room with you, say in Ghana or in the UK, and they may be in US.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't get the attention that they need in the household where they live. So they'll connect to somebody in US who will be abusing them online, who will be grooming them.
Yes.
So I think as parents, sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, we're brought up in the way we're brought up. We can't change that. But we can change the way our children are brought up. We can change the society in which we find ourselves.
We should stop that
by doing some of these things. So I think that is what I'll add for now. From I know your time is run out,
Yes,
but
I know
yeah,
our
there's
time is
more to this. So
Let me bring Madam Tina in quickly, and then we look at if something that we can do to try and make a difference in our community to wrap up. So let me bring Madam Tina into the conversation, please.
I think my colleagues have said it all, but I would like to stress the importance of us showing the affection again. Because as a foster carer, I have seen certain actions of children that, really was very worrying. Because a child has not been shown love, because a child has not heard I love you, because a child, all that child hears is name calling. I had a lovely, beautiful girl at the age of 14 was still bedwetting.
Oh boy.
Her bedroom has to be cleaned 3 to 4 times a week.
Oh boy.
You only have to walk past the bedroom door, and the odor, even when she had menses, she hides the sanitary pads in her room. Again, it's a form of trauma.
Yes.
When she came, she would literally go out there looking for affection.
Oh.
She would pull a boy right in front of my front door and be kissing the boy, and she would come, "Did you see that?" Asking for some reaction. And as she wasn't getting that, and I kept explaining and talking, do you know what she did? She actually accused a boy of rape.
Wow.
So when we don't show our children affection, like we are all saying, there are lots of different ways of showing a child that we love them, that we care about them. Even when your child dress up and going to school, you look lovely, you look nice. I like this color on you. I like that on you. That is all showing that you care about that child.
Yes.
I love you. You can test it. Teenagers love all this testing. When that child feels that affection, trust me, when they go out there and all those pedophiles and all those people out there who just want one thing, that person can confidently say, "Oh, thanks. My mama told me that this morning. Actually, my dad said that on my way." They will not be looking for those inappropriate affection out there. So please, 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 let's find ways. Sit with your children. Find out what makes them feel good. How do they feel when mom or dad says this or say that? So both the negative and the positive, because sometimes we may think we are doing the right thing, but the child will say, actually, when you say this, when you do this, it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Then you ask the child, how should we deal with it? A lot of the time, we don't even explain to the children the consequences of their action until they do it. And that's one of the major problems we have, and which is why I said I don't like the word punishment and the discipline, because it has a negative connotation. It's a consequence. So you have a house rule. If you do this, this is what will happen. I'm not saying that we can have rules for everything. Sometimes they do things that we are not aware of. Sit with the child and ask, what do you think the consequences of this action should be? Trust me, 9 out of 10 children will give themselves more punishment than you, the parent. So we have to get into that habit of communication, engaging, interacting, negotiating with our children. It will really help us. A lot of the cultural norms, again, our sister has mentioned a lot, and with time. So I think we can move on to how we can address some of these issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, and somebody said that we should have a part 2 of this program, because we've not had opportunity to really, exhaust the topic. And it's so important. So please, as I said, clear your diaries will be coming your way in with the part 2, so that we can have deeper conversations about this. Let me start with Diana as we try and wrap up, about what are some of the things that we can do to address this issue and to be able to do things differently. And what we're saying here is that if one person who's listening to us, who has been able to watch this video and make a difference in your homes, we've achieved what we wanted. Only one person. We are that, humble in terms of our expectations. So Diana, please go.
Yes.
There
are a number of things, and I think the way you facilitate.
Go on. We can hear you.
I'm on mute, right?
No. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think the way this conversation was facilitated is you can see a number of ideas already popping up. Much of what Emmanuel said, much of what Tina said, have a lot of ideas on how to even go about discipline. We have already agreed that we are not against straightening and modeling our children. In fact, that is the reason why God created parents. And note that I am not saying that's the reason why God created mothers. The reason God created parents. And there's a role for both parties to play. And both parties are also responsible for raising the necessary income to look after these children. So when one is out, the other should be available to support with the upbringing of children. However, we are warning against some kinds of discipline or modeling or training that has negative effects on these children. It has negative effect on their psychological well-being, on their even on their physical growth. Excessive physical abuse is a no. All those culture enthusiasts who oppose it, think about what physical battery did to you and what you expect it to do to your child. It is unacceptable. No apologies about saying that physical assault is not one of the options for disciplining a child. Exactly. And I think in your subsequent conversation, we probably will go into details with practical example that some have been shared on what to do to make sure that we get children on track. Yeah. It is not physically assaulting, verbally abusing, withdrawing their feeding. Some people actually withdraw paying school fees for teenage girls and boys. How do you train a child by withdrawing their school fees and seizing their school uniforms because they've done something you don't like? Those are not training. Those are abuse. And so we need to depart from it. But I also think culture has spoken a lot into the trajectory we followed as a country and as a people. And we need to engage on that. I've already given you about 4 or 5 proverbs as we have spoken in this session that tell you that we condone it in our culture. Some of it is Bemesu, some of it is spare the rod and spoil the child, which comes from a biblical perspective. Some of it we say that children should not be seen, should not be heard, they must be seen. And they say so the man is allowed to neglect his children and walk away and all of that. If we begin to interrogate those things, we'll begin to accept that culture is good, but some of it is harmful. And very, very lastly, it's important to also notice that you cannot have the conversation about child abuse without talking about gender, because you notice that some of the practices, FGM, child marriage, for example, and all the others that we talked about in this session, many of them, trocosi, have gender connotation. Their reasons are based in how boys and girls are perceived and the value we have of them, and how it was possible that some years ago girls were not allowed to be educated. But most importantly, we need to increase the conversation about children with disability and how we perceive and work with them. Thank you, Ephraim.
All right, so there's a lot to talk about. Children with disabilities is a topic that will be coming in the future. Positive parenting is another topic that is coming back in the future. There is so many topics that's come from this. So thank you very much. Can I come to Mr. Adolfo to give his final words in terms of how we begin to address some of these issues?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Mr. Fram. I think it will be very helpful for us to have another segment on disability. And I must say that in the UK, for instance, once you are a disabled child, the law caters for you automatically. So if you look at the criteria for a child being considered as a child in need to be offered support, so long as you're a disabled child, you're automatically a child in need, and all the support that you need, the state will be willing to help you in that regard. So, which is very good, unlike where we come from, where if you are disabled, then you become a burden on your family, and people tend to sort of, neglect you and all sorts. I think what I will say in terms of wrapping up is the fact that we need to acknowledge the fact that safeguarding is everyone's business. Never look on whilst another child is being abused. Let us also be mindful, especially I can say about UK, that you cannot get away with child abuse. Most Ghanaians are using all sort of strategies. Sometimes they may decide not to hit the child, but they may just squeeze the child, inflicting pain on the child. And what usually happens is that sometimes you may get away, with it today, but tomorrow, sometimes even after a year, the child can still make a disclosure and it will go against you.
course.
I know of parents who have actually lost their jobs because of abusing their own children. There have been instances where you hear parents crying because I traveled to this country to pursue this particular course, and I'm doing this job because of that particular course. But because of how I treated my child, my DBS, I can no longer work with children. I can no longer work with vulnerable adults. So we have to be very mindful. The things that we do behind the scene, things that we'll be doing. I could see somebody highlighting pinching. Yes. It doesn't do the children any good. And what you tend to do is you leave damages, emotional damages in the minds of the children. And it goes with them wherever they go. Some of them are not able to come out of it. It knocks down their self-esteem. They can't do certain things. And it's not helpful. It's very damaging. So I think it is time for us to do our best to refrain from some of the practices that we were exposed to during our childhood and look at how we can do things differently by supporting people within our community, in our churches, and any place that we find ourselves. I think we need to be able to champion this cause to make sure that children are safe and children are not abused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Madam Jones. Can we have your final word as we wrap up?
Yes.
Of what
Before
we do?
I give my final comments, I'll say thank you so much, Afram, for the way you have, coordinated this show, and I thank the viewers as well for their contributions. As we have all said, we definitely need a part 2 to really make the issue of addressing or finding alternative ways more impactful, because we have spent a lot of the time talking about all the others. So definitely part 2, we need more of this to talk about how we can deal with it. So in terms of my final comment, what I would like to say, in the UK, we say safeguarding is everybody's business. But guess what? That actually started in Africa when we said it took a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
Is this
But then it took a village to abuse the child.
Is it a village to raise a child appropriately? So let's go back. Let's roll back and look at this properly. We are now living, I go to Ghana a lot because of the charity work, and now everybody is trying to live like the West and just ignore it, turning a blind eye. We still need to talk and raise awareness. When you see a child being abused, if anyone is interested, when you're in Labadi Beach, Madam Diana, you check this. Labadi Beach. Oh my goodness. Parents are giving their babies to pedophiles. And they are sitting there watching. So if people are not sure of some of the signs of abuse, go to Labadi Beach on a lovely Sunday afternoon and watch those African parents with not all the middle-aged Caucasian are pedophiles. But what I am saying is Ghana is one of the pedophilia rings in the world. So parents, watch it. Watch it. We have all this. We really need to be mindful. So please, it takes a village to raise a child. Let's make sure we are all watching out and looking after each other. Let's keep watch and support our neighbors. Let's keep our neighbors safe. The other thing I would like to say is that when a child does something and it makes you angry, check yourself, because otherwise you are actually releasing your stress on that child. You are not actually supporting or educating the child. So one thing I'll leave with our viewers today, when your child is acting a certain way and you are not happy, ask yourself, why is the child acting that way? What does the child want or need that is causing them to act that way? And then you, the parent or the primary caregiver, ask yourself, how am I feeling now? Are you in a position, emotional state, to be able to educate and co-regulate instead of just meting out certain punishment, disciplines, and things like that? Because sometimes the consequences we give to the children does not equate to the actions that they have shown us.
It's disproportionate.
It's because of the anger and the frustration. So let's look into that before we act on any consequences. So I think I'll end it by saying, let's spend quality time with our children. Let's get to know our children. Sometimes the way the children behave in their schools, are different from how they behave at home. So let's hear our teachers as well when they come to talk to us. Sometimes some of us parents will go and fight with the teachers and try to, defend our children without being open-minded and talking to the child. If we don't do that and get to know our children and become positive role models, our children will find role models in other ways. i.e., it could be gangs, it could be other ways. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you again. Yes.
Afram.
Hello.
Okay, so before we leave, one of our viewers posted something I want to, in case we didn't say. He says, I don't know if it's a show, Agbesinya Ledumegan says that we should reference Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4, because we have talked about the Bible and sparing the rod and spoiling the child. He says that in the New Testament, Ephesians 6:4 says that, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in nature and admonition. So then we end that. We are, in my case, when I see father, I'll put the parents. I'll put the parents. So then we are being encouraged by the Bible to do it in the right way. The pastor has not the code, so we didn't get it wrong.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. You know what? As I said, we've run out of time, and actually we are 15 minutes over the time that we allocated to do this discussion, and we definitely coming for a part 2. So let me take this opportunity to thank my panelists. Very knowledgeable, very intelligent, and very educated. So we cannot thank you enough. Can I start with Madam Tina Latifa Jones to say that it's a pleasure having you on this show, and we are absolutely delighted to have you. So actually, as I said, clear your diaries, because we're booking you for a part 2. What can I say about Mr. Emmanuel Adolfo? Oh my days, yes, it is important. Mr. Adolfo, let me confess, this topic was brought by Mr. Adolfo.
Hey.
Yeah. Thank you very much for letting us discuss this topic, because I normally ask my panelists to suggest topics for the future, and this is the topic he suggested, and it's been wonderful. So Mr. Adolfo, you're coming back again. All right. Thank you very much for that. And finally, Madam Adiko, this is your 3rd time, and every time it is a blessing. Every time it is insightful. I mean, God bless your ministry and God bless what you're doing. It's a delight every time we see you here. So thank you very much, and let me say goodbye.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And goodbye for now. So let's say bye to our viewers for now. So goodbye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
The chat room has been exciting, eh?
Yeah.
Goodbye, Mr. Adolfo. Goodbye.
Bye.
Finally.
Okay,
goodbye.
so I leave the studio, right?
Right. Okay. Goodbye. All right. So wonderful. Thank you, viewers. It has been very, very interesting today. It's been insightful. We've had so many comments. We have so many engagement. We are absolutely thrilled to have all of you. Thank you so very much for your wonderful comments. Thank you for participating in this topic, and that is exactly how we want to be interacting. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to Angela and Laura, and to Afua, and to Madam Angela, and to everybody who's been part of today's discussion. Next week, we are about 4 months into lockdown, and COVID-19 has affected us in so many ways. Next week, we're having our patron, Madam Amananie coming back. Also, we have a clinical psychologist, Dr. Angela Ben coming back, and Mr. Martin Luther King. They're coming back for us to discuss the issue of COVID-19 and how it is impacting on us. Because 4 months into it, we want to know how this thing affects us. In the future, we're coming back with positive parenting and how disabilities, children with disabilities are treated within our communities, and what we could do about that. So please, as we said, suggest topics for future, and we want to thank you. God bless you all, and this is your humble servant, Kwekwa from, signing out. So until next week that we meet again, we say adios.